Dopamine swipe, dopamine swipe. Followers, likes, double tap. Now they control your life.
What is going on, beautiful people? Welcome back to the 817 podcast, where we talk about the lovely city of Fort Worth, Texas. We talk politics, business, culture, news, you name it. If it impacts you, we discuss it. I'm here with Ann Zeta, my co-host. How goes it?
It goes pretty well. How about you?
You would have been proud of me yesterday.
What did you do?
Me and Monica, we went to the Trevor Noah concert, comic show.
Okay.
And we took back roads the whole way from here to Music Hall Fair Park.
And did you compare what it would have, the time it would have taken to take freeways and highways?
It took us like 7 days to get there.
7 days. But how about the stress level? Was the stress level lower on those roads?
No,
or were
really
you
was.
stressed because you were taking so long you were afraid you were going to miss it?
And honestly, it was just also that we were stopping. We did stop and we enjoyed, like, we stopped for dinner and we stopped at for some ice cream, and we were just going with the flow.
There you
So
go.
it was cool, you know. So I was just, you know, and Trevor Noah was great as well.
I like him a lot.
Yeah, it was really awesome just to see everyone there.
I need to
rocking
start
it.
paying more attention to things that are happening locally, not in Fort Worth, because I keep missing things. Like I see other people after the fact saying, "Oh, I saw Stevie Nicks," or "I saw Trevor," or "I went and saw Trevor Noah," and I'm like, "What? I would have liked to have done that."
Yeah. And that's the game when you're in the second city. So you know, and that's what we're going to talk about with DFW Tops and Growth.
There you go.
So we are going to keep these nice and tight. We do have an interview this week. Our big story is going to be Kathleen Hicks, who is running for county commissioner and is going against a runoff with Roderick Miles. And so we're really excited to have her on the show and have a conversation.
Absolutely.
And so let's go ahead and dive in. So this is expanded more than any other metro in the U.S., adding 152,000 people and nearly 153,000 people. Really just looking at this growth, the Houston metro wasn't far behind DFW, attracting new residents. It added more than 139,000 people over the same period, and then raising its population to 7.5 million. Estimated population for DFW is 8.1 million. Both Texas cities outdistanced the third place Atlanta Metro, which that's where I'm headed to tonight. There's 68,000 new residents last year. The Austin Metro area added just over 50,000 people to rank 7th. The San Antonio area was 9th with 48,000 new residents. And then you had, for the first time, Denton County eclipsing 1 million in population. So obviously we see growth. We see it happening. You have businesses coming here. I heard, the Wells Fargo building is really looking good and in progress. So you have, companies moving their people here. How has growth been for you, Ann? Have you felt it, seen it since, or does it just feel like it all feels the same,
Every time anything new gets built or every time anybody gets caught in traffic, they whine about growth and they talk about how many more people are moving here. I try really hard to not be swayed by a one-off anecdotal experience that I have and kind of look to specific data like this. And specific data like this is telling us that we are growing. So I think that is definitely true. I think that people talk about how do we stop the growth or how do we restrict the growth or how do we make it less negatively impactful. And I think for a long time, many of the communities around here have just kind of been letting it happen and not being proactive in their planning. And because we don't have any natural barriers like big bodies of water or mountain ranges or things like that stop the growth, there's definitely that whole sprawl element that we almost always touch on the pod. Sorry about that, guys. But it's interesting to see living in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex for almost 34 years this year. Moved here in 1990 to see the changes that have occurred between the cities, like the major cities. So between Dallas and Fort Worth, how there's literally now something along I-30 the entire way.
Yeah.
And so that growth just continues to happen. And I would like us to plan a little better for it. I'm not one to say stop people from coming here. I'm trying really hard to not be a person who automatically jumps to the negative thing when somebody posts an article about something new that's coming or something new that's being built. That's kind of challenging sometimes.
Well, what I did notice taking the back roads all the way to Fair Park was still how empty and so much potential there is for more dense population and just access on those back roads. I mean, that back roads was just all outdated buildings. And so I thought that was really interesting, taking those back roads. I felt like every DFW Metroplex citizen should drive that back road from Fort Worth to Dallas or vice versa and just see how much land, how much potential, how much space.
Infill is available. Yeah, I think that's definitely true. And I think that it's where we get caught up, because people who live in those areas look at any proposed new development as just bringing more cars and more people. And so that knee-jerk reaction is to be like, no, because we don't have a multimodal transit system that can give people other options to get around other than their cars. And if they base their anecdotal experience on, I got stuck in a traffic jam and the light took forever and I sat through a cycle or whatever, and they're not most people just remember the negative experience they have. And what I've tried to do is, like, every time I went through that area without any problem at all, and think about that, because that, I think, is more often than the other. So then we have folks that live in those areas saying no to more development in those areas, which is the more sustainable way to grow. And so that's a battle. And then when people want to build out in the hinterlands and plunk down, hundreds of single family lots on farm to market roads in the county, and then those folks all get jammed up coming into town, I think that's a more significant concern as far as congestion. I think the roads in the core of cities and in the urban areas of cities have more capacity than people realize that they have. They just kind of always fall back to that anecdotal experience of getting stuck in traffic.
Yeah.
But out on county roads where there's a bar ditch and one lane in each direction, and you plunk down hundreds of single family houses and then put a school, and it takes 45 minutes to get out of your neighborhood because it's developed in a curvilinear street with cul-de-sacs, and there's only one way in and out, and you can't even walk out of your neighborhood because the whole thing is surrounded by, brick walls.
Yeah.
And you've seen those memes where it shows a map and two friends live in a neighborhood across from each other, and the only way to get there is in a car. And if you tried to walk there, you got to walk completely out of the neighborhood and around a big brick wall and back into the other neighborhood. So I got off on a tangent again. My issues with sprawl and my concerns about folks being anti infill because they don't want to disrupt their individual experience of being able to get around in their car.
Yeah, and something you're also seeing, and so that's kind of to me, when you look at the growth was much in the Denton County and Collin County counties, not Dallas County or Tarrant. And so that sprawl is also being seen in our population. I've also saw that McKinney is looking at a 20,000 seat concert venue. So if you're talking about keeping up to date of Trevor Noah's in Dallas, McKinney is even further. And so just talking about what kind of concerts, what kind of venues are being popped up, and then even just where companies are going. And that is also going to create just an interesting dynamic, because we're not sharing large venues anymore, as every single little mini city is having their own little mini complex
and their own smaller convention centers. And speaking of entertainment districts, yesterday at Rotary, we had a gentleman from the Texas Rangers speak, and he was speaking about all of the development that's happening in the Arlington Entertainment District. And the very first question after he finished doing his presentation was, the World Cup is coming here, and how are you going to get all those people in and out without any public transportation? And I was not the person that asked that question. So thankfully, other people are thinking about that as well.
I think we're creating a very unique human experience as Texas sprawls like that. Like you said, the New York cities, the Californias, they didn't have this challenge. But yeah, let's go ahead and move into the second story, which is one thing we can say we are doing better than Frisco or the other counties, and that is how Texas cities ranked on gender pay gaps. 3 cities in Dallas-Fort Worth are among the top 10 for largest gender pay gaps in the country, according to the Chamber of Commerce. The 3 top cities for gender pay gaps are in Collin County. So that's Frisco, McKinney, Plano. And the pay gaps were really dramatic. Frisco pay gap was $52,000. McKinney was $25,000. Plano was $23,000. So the gaps were wide. Fort Worth was on the list at 81 with $8,699. Dallas was at 118 with $6,500. Arlington was at $6,228. San Antonio, $6,412. And even in what was interesting though, places like Brownsville and Garland, women's were making equal or more than their male counterparts.
So let me get this straight. Are we saying that in Frisco, men make $52,000 more than women?
Yes.
Holy cow. That's like a whole salary for a lot of people. I mean, that's
a
lot of people don't even make that much money at all. And we're saying men make that much more than women
in Frisco. Yeah, it says Tuesday marks Equal Pay Day, an awareness event coined by the National Committee of Pay Equity in 1960s to illustrate the gap between men and women. And so, the gap between working men and women across the country is about $11,000. So when you compare it to the national level, that's a very stark difference. Women earning full-time salaries in Texas had 83% of the median weekly take-home pay of their male counterparts. Texas pay gap is par with national figures of women earning about 84% of men's salary. But yeah, and to me, I don't know, it says the position with the widest gender pay disparities in Frisco are management jobs. From 2021 to 2022, the gender pay gap for management occupations in Frisco rose over $56,000, according to the report. What is your kind of experience or seeing this as, being a working professional in the state of Texas?
Well, I mean, I have had a very non-traditional career path. So I definitely probably, if I was included in these statistics, would be bringing that pay scale for women down. And I apologize for that. But they do say it's not a coincidence that jobs that tend to be female dominated are also systematically lower paid than occupations that tend to be male dominated. And it reflects societal devaluation of women and women's work. So, yeah, it's.
What I also saw is the median earning over in Frisco is $94,000. So just when you look at the salary average is extremely high, and that's the issue with population is that even though maybe Fort Worth has the same population, I mean, if the median household income in Frisco is $94,000, that is almost 2.5 times more than my area code's median household income.
Yeah.
So even though you might have the same amount of people in Fort Worth, each person over there is
making
worth
much more.
So now moving stadiums over there like they're trying to do in McKinney or those big blockbuster kind of shopping centers that they're trying to do in Frisco.
Folks have more disposable income to support all of that kind of stuff.
And it's not, so then the population part is even being competed by these disparities.
So I think part of the reason that this article was published at this time and part of the reason that we're bringing it up on the pod is that March was Women's History Month. And so there's been a lot of attention being paid to women-owned businesses. And I thankfully was able to go to an event at Black Coffee, which was a collaboration between Carpenter's Cafe and Catering and Black Coffee. And I think they've done it at least 2 years. I've been the last 2 years, but you were saying maybe you thought they started 3 years ago, having kind of a focus on women-owned businesses in Fort Worth. And they have a pop-up event in the parking lot at Black Coffee where they have all women-owned business vendors around. And that was a very successful event again this year. Hopefully those people are making equal amounts of pay in their endeavors in Fort Worth. But clearly this gender gap disparity study shows that that's a gap that exists and something we still need to work on. And that management thing, talking about male managers getting paid more than female managers, all of this is kind of stereotypical, like who does a better job at what types of jobs. But there's been a lot of discussion lately about maybe if women had some influence in some of these areas that we might be doing things differently and maybe trying something different might be a good idea in some areas where things are not going so well. Yeah. So I don't know. It's all food for thought and hopefully leads to some changes that make things more equitable.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and move into the third story, which you talked about jobs that are predominantly female. Teacher is one of those, and teacher pay shows what you just said about how the female dominant positions often don't get the compensation they deserve.
Exactly. So this is a Star Telegram article entitled Years After COVID, Teachers Still Leaving Profession. So it basically starts off, and I've noticed this lately, that many of our stories start off with kind of a personal story about an individual, which I think is really a good way to make it accessible to folks. But it talks about an individual person who recently left the teaching profession, and she's started a new job where she said the main thing that she noticed was that the noise at home, she's working from home, and the noise at home is definitely different from when she was in the classroom. It's a quieter environment than she's had in years. That after teaching English for 4 years, she switched to a career as an editor for a consulting firm just months before. And the transition from teaching high school to working from home wasn't difficult, she said, but it did take some getting used to. But basically, they're talking about teacher turnover rate has ticked up, that the statewide teacher turnover rate in 2022-23 school year stood out as an all-time high of 21.3% according to state figures, which represents teachers in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. That was gathered by the United Educators Association, and they represent teachers in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. This means that about 1 in every 5 teachers who work in Texas schools during the 2022-23 school year didn't return in the fall, and the figure represents a 4.5% uptick from the previous year. They're saying basically that in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, all but 6 school districts saw an uptick in their teacher turnover rate, and they list, different districts.
Yeah, Ponder, Duncanville, DeSoto, more than 1 in 3 teacher left after 2022-2023 school year.
And that's interesting because, we get a lot of focus in Tarrant County on Fort Worth ISD, but, we have to remember that there are 14 school districts that touch the city of Fort Worth. The city of Fort Worth literally has 14 different school districts in it, so it's not always all about Fort Worth ISD. But they basically released a survey showing that about 3/4 of educators across the state reported experiencing burnout over the last 12 months, and 69% are considering leaving the profession, and that those figures are based on a survey. In the end, I think that one of the things that popped out to me is that they get into some details of why there is such burnout. And they say that it's not just salary, because some of these districts are some of the top paying districts, and they are still seeing the same amounts. I think some of it is, and reading through this article, a thing that popped into my mind is all that we are asking teachers and schools to do that are so much beyond educating young folks. During the pandemic, it was pretty clear that a lot of things happened in schools that were beyond educating, like feeding kids, providing access to healthcare and mental health services. All of that was disrupted during the pandemic, but it also led us to see everything that we are asking our teachers to do. And I think it's similar to all the things that we ask police officers to do. We're asking them to do things way beyond what traditionally was their job. And I think that, this teacher is specifically talking about everything she has to do in the classroom. There's some touching on concerns about disruption in the classroom and trying not to suspend kids. And that made me think about the fact that, how people always talk about back in the day, we didn't have to worry about something that we did behavior-wise being captured on video and ruining our future because not everybody was running around with a camera in their pocket. I don't think that a misbehavior should ruin any child's future. And so they touch on behavior in the classroom and how they're trying to not necessarily require teachers to send kids out of the classroom when behaviors happen, but then that means that teacher is alone in her classroom trying to deal with a behavior problem and continue to teach the rest of the class. Yeah. And these are really problematic, hard, challenging things to do. It made me want to go out and volunteer to be like a helper in a classroom like tomorrow.
Yeah. And it's what I also saw is when I was looking at the Fort Worth Report articles back in the day when they were looking at the jobs that they were cutting, they said the salaries between those jobs that were being cut of those like 100 people was $75,000 to $150,000. So people think like making money in education is a false narrative, but that's a good amount of money. I mean, principals are making six figures, 120, good money today. You're starting in Fort Worth 62, 65. That's more than people start. I mean, that's like more than people start in our company, but I think people will choose to work for SSA because of they get to work from home. I think what's happening post-COVID is people realize the stress of being in the front line interaction with people. You much rather work in front of a screen or a machine and have more of that time to have that space between the action, which is why I think cops are having hard times, nurses having hard times, teachers. It's that front-to-front thing that I don't know if being in COVID has changed our energy around being around people. And look at it. I mean, when you look how much we spend on our phone, we spend more time on our phone than we do with any human we meet with on a daily basis. And so the energy of how we communicate with the world is just massively changing. And teachers is one of those where I think people are feeling like
it all falls to them because everybody else has had this opportunity to do things in a different way. And it can lead to a lot of stress.
And that's why a lot of them also go into the administrator role. And then you have these 1 to 3 districts with for every 1 teacher, there's 3 administrators. And it's just like then because people want to sit in the office and be able to have more of a passive strategy role. But every time you hear someone in those roles, they say, I miss the kids, but you don't miss it enough to enjoy.
Go back and do it.
Exactly. And so it's like there's just a
I think there needs to be a balance for the teachers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They need the support in the classroom so that it's not just them alone dealing with everything.
Yeah.
And I know a couple of people that started out teaching right after the pandemic, and both of them quit.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it was the things that they had to do that weren't kid facing. It was all the reporting back and all the things they had to do to prepare for and follow up after the actual teaching element.
The challenge to me where schools have to massively change, it's only 4% of high school students indicated an interest in majoring in education. Like we're just losing, even if we did, we're just losing the supply of teachers.
And I don't think there's always been a disparaging of the profession. Yeah. I remember the saying that if you can't do, you teach, which is a horrible thing to say because the teachers are amazing. And we all have memories and examples of teachers in our lives that made huge positive impacts on us that we can say, we are successful, but for this teacher. And so I think that is...
And that narrative has hit... I'm looking at the TEA, Texas Education Agency data at a conference I was just at, and it said Mike Morath did a whole study around 23% of new teachers in the United States come from 1/3 of the college graduating classes. So that means only 23% of teachers in the classroom come from the top 33% of kids who graduated in the class, where in like Singapore, Finland, and South Korea, it's 100%.
And if you ask young people who are interacting with their teachers what they want to be when they grow up, often some of them say they want to be teachers because they have that positive experience with their own individual teachers. But by the time they get out of school or by the time they get into school, they may have heard this narrative of that's not the thing that you want to do and you want to make money. And so you should do something else, which is unfortunate.
And teachers and admin and leadership roles do make money. Granted, they bust their behind. Educators are the hardest working people I know.
But that narrative also comes back at them about, they get the summer off kind of stuff. But seriously, I think that they're absolutely undervalued. And I think that we need to find ways to support them so that the burnout doesn't happen, so that all of that doesn't fall on their heads.
All right. Well, we got to keep it humming because we have an interview. And so our interview today is with Kathleen Hicks, who is running for Tarrant County Commissioner. She was the youngest woman ever elected to the Fort Worth City Council. Kathleen Hicks embarked on a mission to bring real and tangible benefits to her district. During her tenure, she set her sights on 3 critical objectives: fostering economic growth, enhancing healthcare services, and ensuring that the city's services were accessible to all. Kathleen is now running for Commissioner seat 1. After the election, she was the lead, but still needed to go to a runoff. And so what's really exciting, we're here with her today after us making a call out to on the show last week. And so here is Kathleen Hicks.
My Fort Worth story is how I got involved in politics as a child. My mom became a municipal court judge at age 27, and my dad died before I was born. And so my mom really didn't believe in babysitters if she didn't have to. So she took me along to everything, and I questioned everything. I was this nerd, and she was this glamorous woman, and I was such an introvert, but she was great about taking me to events all over, and it made me really comfortable in every part of the city of Fort Worth and Tarrant County. And so I really credit her for my love of politics and moreover my love of being involved in the community. Her first law office was on Evans Avenue, and that's in the heart of Council District 8, where I went on. I never thought I'd be an elected official. I wanted to be a college professor. So, she really was outstanding about, making sure that this young woman had these experiences. And it just really gave me the bug. And, I felt like from the beginning, I kind of was an old soul, and, she just really empowered me. And we're still such a team. She's like, how'd the union go this morning? And so I get teary thinking about it because she is just such a force. And so that's kind of my earliest Fort Worth story. And the catalyst for me being engaged and joining all these boards and, deciding to come back to Fort Worth. I never thought at first, with an international relations degree, I thought I'd be in another country. And it's really because of my mom that I came back here and really learned how important it is to support our communities and engage them.
Yeah, yeah. So where'd you kind of go to high school in Fort Worth? What's the
I went to I'm of the Mercy, wore uniform until I was 17 years old. I skipped a grade. When I literally tore up my uniform. I was just so tired of it. And then I went to Oak Ridge in Arlington for 4 years. And grew up in Ryan Place, and then we moved to Rolling Hills in Southeast Fort Worth. So
you went away for college and
I
then
did.
came back to Fort Worth, which is, those of us who have kids that were raised here and went away and we're looking at making Fort Worth a place they want to come back to.
Yeah.
I'm interested in that.
Yeah, no, yes, it's true. I went to Mount Holyoke College, a women's college, absolutely loved it, and, was so embraced there and really felt empowered. And then my advisor said, why don't you go to England for your junior year? So I went to Oxford, loved it, became an Anglophile, still follow the British royal family. It's my guilty pleasure, sorry.
There's a lot going on there right
There
now.
is, right. And then I went back for my master's at Nottingham University in international relations, and from there I was hired for UNHCR, United Nations Refugee Services, to work in Kenya up on the Sudanese border, and it was so scary. I mean, it was, I think more Americans need to see how most people have to live in this world.
Yeah.
And so, without any safety net, and, it was the largest refugee camp in the world at that point. And, I had to get all these vaccinations to even get there. And I never got sick, thankfully. But it was just surreal. It really was. And then my grandmother, Kathleen, got sick. And my mom just freaked out and said, you are 2 or 3 continents away. We need you home. And so I got airlifted out because it had gotten so messy with the Sudanese. At that point, I was 14 years old, the Sudanese war. And I went up to the Sudan, unbeknown to my family, and they freaked when they heard that too. But I came home and I went to work for Ralph McLeod, who was my predecessor on the council. And I just was hooked. I made about $10,000 a year. I was a hay lady. I had another job at TCYC, a nonprofit that's closed now. And I worked for Ralph, and I just got so interested. And he is such a nice man. And then
so you were his district director.
Was
that? I don't know if those council aide.
No,
back
it was
then.
just council aide. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, it was council aide.
But those council aides, they do a lot in those
Yes.
offices. That's an important role for sure.
Yeah, and I just really just got so into working back in the community I was raised in, and really enjoyed it. And then he didn't tell anyone, but February 2005, he announces at some dinner he's not running, and I'm 30 years old and I'm scared to death. I mean, I literally, I'm still very much an introvert and have a hard time. They're just, I mean, I love to talk. I can't say that, but I'm not anything like my mom, who was just like, she's this icon and force in Fort Worth politics. And so it was hard, I mean, and being so young, and my main opponent was much older. And I will say, in the council during that period, more than racism, I dealt with a lot of misogyny of people that just really thought that, economic development was my jam. I knew way before Michelle Obama started talking about food deserts that I had to make it happen for these 90,000 people that were going into your old district or going to, outside the city of Fort Worth to get quality fruits and vegetables. And, when I was elected, people were like, oh, she doesn't know what she's doing. We're going to put her on the landscaping committee for Southwest Parkway. I'm just like, yeah, my mom didn't sell furniture to get me through Mount Holyoke to do this. This is fun. Love to garden, but I got to deliver for folks. I got to deliver for these elderly women who tell me they have to get on the bus to go so far to get quality fruits and vegetables. So Masonic Home became available, and within 2 years it was happening. It was just surreal. It was just like I have insomnia, so I just would stay up on, I'm thinking
researching and studying and trying to find an answer.
Yeah, and all the pieces had to come together, dealing with crime, showing people that that people made a lot more in the district than they said. But, they tend to hide their money under the bed. We have the district is now majority Latino, so I had to understand those demographics and really go and pitch it to Walmart, because at that point they weren't doing anything in inner city. So, and I know people get, they're not, I know Walmart has issues, but it's inexpensive, and it really became a catalyst for all this other development around
Renaissance.
Yeah. We got Marshalls and stores I would never think would come in the hood. And so I shop there, I want to see it. I want to make sure it's still doing well and it's clean. It's, it's constantly clean. A little girl came up to me the other day and was like, you were at my church. And I was like, baby, I don't know who you are, and, but it just it just really feels good. And always my dream was, long after I was gone from the council, to really make sure that community was taken care of. So we rezoned, and you were on the zoning commission at that point, we rezoned over 70% of that district to get rid of liquor stores and gambling. And, at that point there were 2 banks in that district for 100,000 people. That's just bad. So, I just felt that the urgency of now, and that's what I'll bring if I'm elected to county commissioner, the urgency of now. I care so much about the community, and nobody can say that we were doing it because we wanted to get paid.
No, absolutely not.
Because when I started, you got paid $65 if you went to the meeting.
Right.
And then a grand $25,000,
Yep.
and
it's funny because Commissioner Brooks had said to me at one point, have you ever considered running for county commissioner? And I was like, well, that would be your seat, sir, because I live in that district. Yeah. But he was saying, well, the pay is much better and the benefits are much better.
Right.
So I think that Yeah, definitely something to consider.
Yeah.
When you are trying to get people to do the hard work of representing the community.
Yeah.
So my question is, you have that deep Fort Worth roots. The county is big. The county, I know you said you had an international degree, but it almost feels like Tarrant County has international problems. Just
Right.
all the different towns, neighborhoods, how they work and how they operate. How do you see your value from being a Fort Worth City Council member, helping you kind of do and connect with all people in Tarrant County?
Yeah. Well, my undergraduate degree is in politics
Oh, okay.
and African American history.
Gotcha.
So, and so I didn't even mention that, but I think that having, I was always about. I always tell people the day I think I know it all, I don't need to be doing this. So we had a district aid advisory board, and the district used to be very diverse. I mean, it's still diverse, but, I represented all the way down to Rendon, which was very well off, and, and then all the way to Greenway neighborhood. So the district was extremely diverse. Those areas, some of those areas have been taken out, and I loved representing South Main. I lived right off South Main, and one of the reasons I was always in D.C. was trying to get that money for South Main. So, I enjoyed representing a diverse area, and Precinct 1 is very diverse. It goes all the way to Benbrook, to, I told you Everman is in there, Forest Hill, then all the way east. And I live in the Riverside community, and I'm very proud that, of all the candidates, I'm the only one that really lives in the hood. So I live in a beautiful condo, but when I go outside, I see homeless people, I see people dumpster diving. I want that reminder every day about the other Fort Worth. And one of the things I really want to do is focus on homelessness again, and really focus on it, wraparound services. And I think we've kind of lost our way in dealing with it. It's just sort of forgotten on Lancaster. I really want to engage our constituents, whether they are Republican or Democrat, whether they voted for me or not, so that they feel like, I'm not going to hide behind staff. I'm very much, here's my phone number. Everybody has it. I've had it forever. And
I appreciate you saying you're going to represent everybody.
Yeah.
Because that, I think, is something that we've lost lately in races, and people get into office and then they're like, I'm this party or that party,
right,
and I am only working for those people. So
and it makes me, it's kind of hard running Republican or Democrat, because on the council you're into, and when I was elected, that wasn't such a big issue, and now it's just so it's so ugly and nasty. And I think roads are they're neither Republican or Democrat. Economic development and doing the right things in these communities is neither Republican or Democrat. I got the entire council to approve all the work I was doing on economic development at Masonic and doing the TIF and all that, and I'm very proud of that, of really being able to explain to them how important this was. So, I want to really work on infrastructure. East Rosedale was a project that people have been fighting over for 25 years. They wanted it like West Rosedale, then they didn't. It was just a mess. And so we were able to cobble that money together to make it happen all the way to 820. And that really helped Texas Wesleyan re-engage in the community. And I'm really proud of that because, back then, at one point, they were talking about leaving the hood. And they're one of the biggest employers in Southeast Fort Worth. So, I think there are a lot of similarities. I think there are a lot of differences. JPS is something I'm very concerned about. I went without health care in the past, and so I can identify with that. And my office was at JPS when I worked for Sickle Cell, and I saw a lot of things that really bothered me, and so that is forefront in my mind as well if I get this position. So
in the questions on the League of Women Voters, which I always appreciate when people fill those out, if it says somebody didn't fill something out, that is a flag to me. So I appreciate you doing that.
Oh no,
you
I
talked
fill
about
them all out.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I write it myself.
But your answers about JPS, I think, resonated with wanting to have those services in the community. And I know they have a big bond that they've passed, and that's going to address some mental health issues as well, which is something that is really important to all of those topics that you just brought up about addressing homelessness and the needs in the community. So I don't know if there's a question there.
And I also saw that there you said that you're worried and concerned about JPS. So I'm interested to hear what's that concern for, because I saw that RFPs are out and like they're looking to maybe offload some services that they were once providing that they may not want to in the future.
Yes. Well, yesterday I toured the Federal Medical Center out in North Fort Worth, and in that area, and I was so impressed with what they are doing. They have, a pharmacy with no wait. They have OBGYN services. They have internal medicine. They're about to have a dentist there, podiatry care. And, I was really impressed. And they're really interested in doing some of these centers for JPS. And I think that's a great idea. People say I talk too much about 76104, but I lived in 76104 for a number of years. And while it is the best of Fort Worth, it's also the worst because we have the lowest mortality rate in the country. It really it mirrors sub-Saharan Africa. And if with the Walmart and cleaning up Cobb Park and bringing Cook's Children's there and another federal medical clinic, 76119 no longer has the statistics that 76104 has. So I know that we can do it, but we have to work on all these different things to make it happen. Already people think I'm there and they call me and say, hey, I have a friend that has chronic kidney disease. And I talk to him on a daily basis. He's a real fan of yours. And he talks about how he has to wait months for a specialist. He has to wait 7 or 8 hours to get his prescriptions. We can do better than that. These are our tax dollars going. And what I always tell people is, hey, maybe JPS, you don't use JPS, but your tax dollar, the majority of the county's tax dollars go to JPS. And so you should be engaged in these issues and say, why is this? Because we don't want frequent flyers having to go and get their medical care from going to the emergency room. And that's what's happening right now. And that weighs on me as someone who really cares about this city. And my aunt has end-stage renal failure, and I have to take her to dialysis. And I sit with her often, and I see 99% are Latino and Black. And I'm really glad that Commissioner Simmons did a health fair recently in Arlington about, being preemptive in your care, and really educating people. I don't think we're there, and we have to do more. And so JPS does worry me. It does keep me up at night, and it's one of the first things that I want to tackle if elected is going out with JPS staff to different parts of Precinct 1 and asking folks, what's wrong? What do we need to do differently? I love that you brought up mental care. One of the reasons why the sheriff's department is, the prison, that is a huge mess. But one of the reasons why it's so crowded is you have all these people with mental health issues. And if we can engage them before they go in the jail and try to deal with what's wrong, so many people have issues now. COVID was horrible. My nieces and nephews, a lot, it was hard missing school. And I think about the problems they have. I can't imagine what it is for adults, what they've been through. So I just think that, yes, I'm glad that the bond is finally moving ahead after being, 2 years delayed by them before they go in the jail and try to deal with what's wrong. I mean, so many people have issues now. COVID was horrible. My nieces and nephews, a lot, it was hard missing school. And and I think about the problems they have. I can't imagine what it is for adults, what they've been through. So I just think that, yes, I'm glad that the bond is finally moving ahead after being, 2 years delayed by
whatever it was delayed by.
Yeah, I don't want to say, but yeah, and then COVID. I'm glad it's moving along, and I like the centers in different areas of the community. But like this partner that showed me yesterday how they can save us a lot of money and still deliver these services. We need to be looking at that, out of the box thinking. JPS is really important to me that we deal with, and soon.
I think tied into that, you were talking about having centers in locations where people can get to them.
Right.
I was appreciative of your comments on the panel that the Fort Worth Report did, because you were the only candidate that mentioned transportation and the importance of multimodal transportation and getting people around. So, I know the county has to work in, broader than like the city to provide that. And I know there's all kinds of studies going on right now. I know the COG is looking at some transportation in 76104. There's a lot of focus because of that study that came out talking about how bad things were in 76104.
It's very bad. Yeah.
And I think it'll be a big job for the next commissioner to kind of try to wrangle all of that energy and effort that's going into looking at things and planning and actually implement those
things.
And
I know that's near and dear to your heart, and it is to me, because I was on Regional Transportation Authority my entire tenure on the council, and we were out of compliance then. And, I think that I know people are like, oh, climate change, what a joke.
Air quality, asthma in children.
Yeah.
It's not a joke.
It is not a joke. It is not a joke. And I almost have a constant sinus headache these days when I never had it before. So, first of all, I think, again, we're going to lose businesses coming here if we do not have better transportation. I think we lost Boeing to Chicago because we don't have good transportation. And the younger generations, my niece, it took her forever to go get a driver's license. Her parents were like tired of driving her around, but they want good quality transportation. And I think we are so behind. It's going to be so expensive, but we have to do it. We cannot build more freeways and toll roads that are so expensive for the average person. Unless I have a doctor up in Keller, and unless I'm desperate, I'm just cheap. I will leave an hour and a half early, so I do not have to pay those toll roads because they're like $20. And I'm like,
last week I was telling him I have a new car. I didn't have a toll tag on it yet, and I went to Dallas for a funeral, and it was $57 in tolls.
Oh my god!
Without a toll tag.
Okay, do we live in New England now? I mean, what in the world? I mean, that isn't. I mean, imagine how that is for someone that works two jobs.
And unexpected. And half the time I don't realize that I'm. When you get on and get off, and then you get a new sign, and that's another toll for this section of the roadway. Yeah. We try to avoid that.
Oh, I certainly do. And so, it is urgent that we deal with this. And I can't say enough about, air quality and how I think that's tied to so many different diseases and people getting cancer earlier in their lives. I mean, I think that we don't even know how bad it is. And there was a study that came out about plastic where, they've known since the 50s that it could not be recycled in a proper way, and they just and so I am a voracious reader, and I read everything from BBC to the German news to what's going on in Africa, everywhere I've lived, to try Australian news where I've never been, but I'm fascinated about what they're doing. And so we don't have to reinvent the box, but we've got to educate people and really commit to public transportation and make sure that the public transportation is going where people need it to be. It's got to be that way because I'll ride it. I did in England and in Massachusetts. It was, I wasn't embarrassed. So, we've got to get Southerners to understand and DART has, they were very smart and committed that money. So, yes, that's very important.
Well, I would love to. It just seems like hearing you talk and hearing you connect with Ann. One of the reasons why I resonate with Ann so much is how much she cares about all the little things that actually makes our lives better. Right. And it seems like for you being a part of Fort Worth, doing all the little things right for decades, got you to the place where you were the lead candidate for Commissioner 1 with the most votes. So I'd love to tell, how's your team? Did y'all celebrate? Were you surprised? How'd you handle that? And with the election in May coming up, how are you guys looking at continuing to kind of hit all the things that you guys are hitting as you got, almost 37% of the votes?
Well, I always run scared, so I was in bed in my pajamas that night, and my mom calls me. He's like, "Get up, get up!" You just won an early vote, and so I was out all day, and I didn't go to the big precincts. I went to Rolling Hills, where I grew up. I went to Fairmont, where I grew up. And anecdotally, the response was like, we're Team Hicks, and it really meant a lot. I walked the entire precinct. I've now lost almost 20 pounds, so that's a nice thing. But
that happens during campaigns.
Oh, I know.
I got scary skinny when I was campaigning.
Yeah. And so, well, you're already so thin.
I know. That's why I said it was scary skinny.
Yeah.
It wasn't a good thing for me.
I know. I understand. And so, while my opponent said he thought he was going to win outright, I didn't know what was going to happen. I just didn't. And we didn't do any polls. I knew the polls that, showed me coming out number one. But I know a lot of people thought, oh, she's a has-been, whatever, And I think that just really going and talking to people, I think people were shocked when they opened their door and there I was. But I have a wonderful team of volunteers because we didn't have the money to pay people. And so the fact that we had volunteers that are still so committed, all I can do is pay their dinner sometimes. And they just really believe in, the positive change that I'm trying to bring to the area. And it just happened. Somebody was like, well, what was your early vote program? I was like, I sent out a mailing, that resonated with people. So no, I don't take anything for granted. We'll work just as hard. I've been doing campaigns since literally I was a child. My mom would leave me out in some area to go past. It was just crazy. My
kids did some block walking.
Right. So, it's just, you take nothing for granted. We'll be doing the same old style, walking, and we're starting to call next week. Again, they got a spring break, and then they'll start next week. And we've looked at precincts where I did well and precincts where I didn't do so well, and go from there.
No, I'm just curious, which precincts did you see that you did well, and if you could share in the ones that you didn't.
Well, I did really well in Crowley, and I think that's because we walked that entire area, and I was really surprised by that. We did really well in Fairmont and Ryan Place, again, an area that we walked. Someone said the hippie moms really like me. And I said, well, I'm a hippie, so okay, cool, that's awesome. I did well in District 8, and so, and even areas that, even Benbrook area, we held our own. That
really shows the diversity of that district.
Yeah, it's very diverse.
Wild.
It's wild. It really is. And I think it also helped that I focused on the entire precinct. I didn't just focus on the area that people feel, as most comfortable. Thanks to being this latchkey kid with my mom, I really feel comfortable in any area of our city. And so I was fine walking any of those areas. I think we're always talking about how Fort Worth is so divided. I think that my election showed that that's not necessarily true. And if you just go up and talk about, what's important to you, and then, engage with the citizenry and also with voters, there's a lot that brings us together.
Willingness to just talk instead of just, pulling back to positions and then feeling like you digging in your heels and that you're not going to have something in common.
Right.
Just the willingness to have the conversation.
And then I have to tell you, I started really late in this process. I was another gentleman filed at the end, but my opponent in the runoff had 2 years to get a number of endorsements. He has the endorsement of Commissioner Brooks. I didn't start until October, basically, of last year. And so that I had a lot of catching up to do. But right away, we just started, really reminding people of what I was able to accomplish. And I just think that resonated. And that's what we'll continue to do. And I have a team that will call me in the morning. They're like, okay, what are you doing today? What do you need help with? Get up. I'm not a morning person, but I'm getting to be. They made me a morning person, but, those 8:30 a.m. council meetings were like, oh, where's the Starbucks? But, they have just been extraordinary. I would not have been able to do this without just great people that really believe in me. And it's very nice. They're very wonderful.
Yeah, I had friends or like people. I was like, oh, I voted for Kathleen. I was like, and I asked why, and I got a text here, and there's a little bit of curse words in here.
Oh my!
But so I'll blank some of it. It is about keeping that crazy blank Tim in check.
Yeah,
I think Kathleen is much more willing to call him out. What is your take on that, or the leadership at the commissioner, and Tim O'Hare is who the person was referencing to, but it seems like that was a key thing, that your personality, your keeping people accountable, seemed to be the thing that when I did talk to voters who voted for you, that's kind of was the thing. What do you feel about that and those marks?
Well, I think that I'm going to be really, really honest with you. I think that one of the things I was worried about when I was on the council is that I would be termed the angry black woman. So when I voted against stuff, I would make my colleagues angry when I would say stuff, but I always wrote it down. I am really big about quoting my sheroes in the civil rights movement, and I wrote my senior thesis on black women in the civil rights movement. And when women are out there, they're called aggressive, where men are assertive. And so I was very cognizant of that, and so I would just always write down what I was going to say, and just
be educated and informed,
right,
and know your stuff.
Right,
yeah.
Right. And so I'd have people ready, they'd sit there and they'd go, after I'd make my comments, they'd look at me like, oh my God, she just tore us up. But, one of the biggest losses I think that I had on the council was payday lending. I really, really hate all the payday lending in Southeast Fort Worth. I think it preys on people, and I will continue to fight that the rest of my life. Every other city, major city, and small cities in Texas have some kind of payday lending. And, I wanted to cry that night because I knew that it was just bad. And, again, I'm not affected by that. I have a bank account, but my folks are affected by it. And so I was very calm with the powers that be, but I let my how I felt come across. And I paid for it by losing Mayor Pro Tem. I don't need titles. And I'm never going to be my mom. I'm a nerd. When I did my fundraiser, first one, I showed a picture of myself in my uniform, my glasses, my braces. I went through some hard years, and I was a nerd. But I think I'm very good at being very calm, not cussing anybody out, but just reminding them how wrong they are. And, yes, I am very strong at it, and I will not back down. And as I told someone at a previous event this morning, I can be a pest, on these issues. Like, transportation is just so darn important to me, and we've got to get it together. JPS is so darn important to me. We have to get it together, and I'm not going to stop until we do. That's just period. I'm not. I've been too blessed with an extraordinary education and living all over this world. So to come back here to Fort Worth, I'm not backing down to anybody. And I will work with anyone on any day of the week. That's how I was able to get a unanimous vote for the TIF and the economic development piece from the late, great Chuck Silcox, who would be considered a Trumper now. But he said, this is the best darn use of economic development tools I've ever seen in my life. And he really made me cry because I was able to literally sit down with him and explain it, and he got it. So, I think that's what it's all about. And I am I'm ready. I'm so ready to go in and do, I wish November was now. So if I get that far, I really do, because there's so much work to do. And I'm not going in to fight with anybody, but I'm going to stand up for the people of Precinct 1. You can bet that. I am so proud of the fact that we were so outspent, so forgotten, taken for granted, all that, and the voters had a different idea. I'm so proud of that, and I just think this is what can happen in Fort Worth.
Awesome. Well, it's KathleenHicks.org. We'll have it in the show notes of the podcast if you want to get involved, donate, or just learn more about Kathleen. Thank you so much for being part of the 817 podcast. We're really excited to hear your story, and congrats on the early momentum that you have.
So that was a great interview with Kathleen Hicks. We appreciate her willingness to come on the show because we like to make sure that our voters are educated and informed about the folks that are stepping up to fill the seats. And we wish her all the best in her race on County Commissioner seat number 1. Having served on City Council, I know what that's like too, and we have that in common. So we really appreciate her coming on the show and sharing with us her vision for the future of County Commissioner seat number 1.
Love it. Well, we got to move into wins and losses now. And so wins and losses is where me and Ann pick a win and a loss for the week for Fort Worth. Sometimes we expand into state, national, or anything that's just tickling our fancy. Can I say that? Or is that it wasn't, I don't know. I have no idea. But so let's dive into wins and losses.
So we usually start with losses so that we can end on a win. And there definitely were a few losses this week. And you know how I always used to turn my losses into wins? This week I was struggling to find a win, but I definitely have a loss. And that is that our Texas Attorney General, Ken Paxton, is at it again, suing people for things that I think are ridiculous. In this case, he is suing Meow Wolf in Grapevine and 4 other businesses over banning off-duty officers from carrying guns. And we'll have the article in the show notes. I don't really need to go into a whole lot of detail on it. It seems to me that all the venues that it was brought to their attention that they can't tell police officers that they can't have weapons when they're off duty responded by saying that they were fixing their practices. And so this is just a lot of hot air and trying to garner attention, I think. But I just wonder if there are not more important things to be focused on.
Mine goes the same as well. It's the non-woke American Rodeo featuring music of Detroit cowboy Kid Rock at AT&T Stadium. Fans will see a different kind of cowboy at the Professional Bull Rider World Final Championship in Arlington in May. It's Kid Rock. The Michigan Boar Singer is partnering with PBR on Kid Rock's Rockin' Rodeo, a new rodeo even which matches Kid Rock's music. At the end of the day, people always get me worked up when they say, "Oh, why are you so anti-rodeo? Why are you so anti-cowboy?" Because to me, it's you go into you see the culture and you know that 90% of people in that culture vote and ways to keep policies that allows for oppressive systems, racism, and not actually promoting equity or progressive views where it supports people. And so, again, I'm a believer that the rodeo and Cowtown and all that is in Fort Worth, in Arlington. The underbellies of that is Republican propaganda to keep the status quo. And now I just think it's showing right here and right in front of our faces in the largest stadiums in the world of having the non-woke tour of Kid Rock. So I don't know why I see all people trying to act like this is cool, putting Cowboys hats on and all that stuff. I know it's a part of paying the bills, but at the end of the day, in Fort Worth, we have to do something to stop it. If you're going to protest Starbucks for Palestine, you got to start protesting Fort Worth for Cowboys.
So I struggled, I think, this week to find a win, and there were a couple that I was contemplating. One was that the zoo had a world record-breaking attendance on the Half Price Wednesday. I know some of the neighbors probably were a little concerned about the congestion and the traffic. Again, could be fixed with more public transportation. But I think it's a cool thing that we have such a world-class zoo, and that zoo is very popular, and a lot of folks want to go to it. So basically, I think I'm just going to claim that as the win this week. University Drive construction was paused for the spring break week in order to try to accommodate the attendance at the zoo. And I think there was a lot of collaboration in that effort. And there might have been a few pinch points that still caused some angst amongst people. But I just want to give a shout out to all the folks that worked really hard to make sure that that could be pulled off successfully.
Yeah, I love that. Well, my positive will be that I took the transportation. I landed in Terminal B, took public transportation back to Fort Worth. But on that road, I just saw so many people using it, and it was pretty full. And it was full with families going to the stockyards. It was full with families. There was a group of older ladies, and they got on when I was leaving, and they quote unquote said, "I just wanted to show you a real Texas city." And so who knows where they were all from? But I talk about these things the way I do because you're right. People are showing up to be here and be curious about what we do, and unfortunately, I think a lot of tourism and a lot of stuff just doesn't see who were actually on the boards at the beginning of those times, what those people believed in. And so they created a Texas and a Fort Worth that allows people to come and play, but not be conscious of what they're playing in. It'd be like a sandbox of sand with little mites and bugs in it, and your kids leave with fleas. But the positive is that people were coming, and I think they were using public transportation to do it. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I saw somebody online talking about coming to Fort Worth from Oklahoma City on Amtrak and asking where they should stay and what that they could get to. And I was happy to provide them with all the access that you have via public transportation. If you stay in downtown Fort Worth, you can get to the Cultural District, you can get to the Stockyards, you can get to all of the places near Southside. All those places are accessible without having a car. So you can get off Amtrak, you can get on buses and trains and get around to those places in Fort Worth. And she had a very positive response to telling her about Zip Zone and the buses that go to the Stockyards and the electric bus that goes to the Cultural District and all of that. So I think it can be a good thing.
All righty. Well, this was a full show for you guys. I hope you enjoyed the interview because we have a lot more coming up. We'll have another interview next week and another interview the following week. And then we got a couple cool interviews that we're sneaking up in here that we'll be making happen. So hopefully you enjoy them. But I love seeing the last episode being a high listen show. I started looking at our highest ranked shows, and some of them are just me and you. And so that's pretty cool to see that you guys just appreciate me and Ann, and just wherever we go, seeing and hearing you guys talk about that you listen to the show.
Yep. Keep turning out. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. Swipe, dopamine, swipe. Followers, likes, double tap. Now they control your life. Dopamine swipe. Followers, like, double tap. Now they control your life.